In this video, quickly, I want to show you how server and client components are different when you want to fetch an API in Next.js and render components. So basically we want to compare them to see how we can implement them and what are the differences between those two. The very first thing we need to do, just create a simple project here. So npx create next app latest. And if you don't have the setup already, please watch my another video about how you can actually install the necessary tools and how you can have a new project in Next.js, so I don't explain it here. Client, this is the name of the project, test client server. Yes, 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 no, and yes. All default values should be fine here. Okay, now our project is ready. Open it with VS Code here. Let's open a new terminal here in VS Code. So if you don't have VS Code, just go ahead and install it. It's really easy. So now let's run the project. npm run dev. Simply with this, and go to this URL, and we have a really simple Next.js project here. So in the newer version of Next.js, we have something called app routing. So basically everything you need to do is in this app folder, and routing is based on the name of the folders you have inside it. So as you can see here, the home page is this page here because there is no routing here. So let me clean it a little bit and then I can show you how it works. So let's put a simple div here, home page, and let's clean all the CSS, save it, and now this is the home page in the root of the project. So if I want to add a routing here like blog, so the only thing we need to do is just add a new folder called blog, and that's all. Inside this we need to create a file called page.tsx, and we need to create a component here, const page. I want to use arrow function for this, return div. So here is the list of posts. Export, let me make it bigger if you can see it. Export default page. Okay, now if I go to this URL, to this route, it shows a list of posts here. So I have a fake API here. Basically I can use it to fetch data, so we don't have to create the API right now for this tutorial because we just want to test how we can fetch data using an API here. So this is a free API, you can just copy and paste it. So it's JSON placeholder dot typicode.com/posts. So here I can just copy that, and we're going to use fetch tool here to fetch API. It's really simple. We just need to say fetch this, and then we can just say const data, and let's create a function here and put this fetch syntax inside that. Const get data like this, and we want to place it inside that. So const data, and this should be async. I will explain this async and await functionality in another video, but simply because we don't want to make the application wait for this request, because this is a really simple API, but there are times that the API is really time consuming. It takes a long time to return the data. So we don't want to make the application wait for that. We want the application to render everything, and then as soon as the data is returned, it can show the data. With async and await, we have that functionality. Then we just need to grab the result with, I may name it response, and here should be data res.data. Actually, it's JSON. And now, so basically we want to show the list of titles of the posts here because we're using a client component. And what I need to do here is actually I need to say use client, but don't do it for now. Later we'll see why we need it. But here, to actually render the components, we need to use states. So basically with the states, we can have a variable, we can keep the data there, but basically React or Next.js re-render the component based on the states. When the states are updated, it renders the component again. So here, let's create state. So we want to have posts here and set posts. I'm not going to explain everything here because we just want to have a comparison between server and client component, and you need to know a little bit about both. So if you don't know what a state is, leave me a comment. I'll try to create another video of this. However, there are a lot of good videos out there already explaining this. I just need to update this posts state with the data we have from the API. And then inside this, let me add a p tag here, list of posts. And here just need to say posts.map using map functionality, and then post now we need to say post we need to have key here, post.id. Oops. Say post.id and post.title. So, and we don't need curly brackets here, we just need to use parentheses here. That's the first issue here. Now also it doesn't recognize ID and title. Because we're using TypeScript here, we need to define the type of posts. So let's create an interface here. Interface post, and we have ID, which is number, and we have title, it should be string, and we need to define the type of state like this here. We want to have an array of posts basically, so we can define it like this. Now the error is gone. So the only thing left to do is that basically it's just a function, get data, and we need to call it. But where we should call it, basically in client component we have a hook called useEffect. useState is also a hook to define states, but also we have a hook called useEffect, and one functionality it has that when I say use effect, and we need to import it from React. And here we can say that as a second argument, we just pass an empty array, and it means that when it's rendering the component for the first time, you need to run every code inside here. So here I just say get data. And that's all. So for the first time when it's trying to render the component, it calls get data and then fetches the data inside it. So now everything should be fine, and let's see the output here. So we have a problem. If I refresh it, you can see that it's you're importing a component that needs a use effect and only works in a client component. So as I told you, we need to add use client here. So that way we're telling NEXTJS that this is a client component. So now we have a list of titles here. But what does it mean when we say this is a client component? So it means basically everything's happening in the browser. Like fetching the data is happening in the browser. And if I try to refresh, if I come to the network section and mark fetch XHR here, and if I refresh the page, you can see that we have a request API call here to this API, and we have the data. So basically the front end part of the application, when we render the application in the browser, it's trying to fetch the data and then show it here. So it's happening in the client part. But now let's try to implement the server component here to see how that works. So the only thing I want to do, let me try to rename it and say it's client, block client. And I just need to copy this and paste it. Server. So now if I go to blog client, it works fine. But if I go to blog server, it also works fine because it's the same. But now we want to make it to work as a server component. So the very first thing we need to do is just get rid of this use client, but we're gonna see a lot of errors here. The very first error is that we can't use effect and use state. So let me get rid of use effect here completely altogether. And then if I refresh, so also use state is the problem here. So I just need to get rid of that as well. But now we don't have access to the state anymore. So I need to remove this as well. But now when we want to render it, the problem is that we don't have any state here, but we need to keep data in a variable. So we just need to use a normal variable here. What we can do is that in this get data function, you just need to return data, and then here we just need to grab data. I'm gonna call it posts. So when we call get data here, it returns posts, and then we put it inside posts variable. Now we can use posts here, but we need to move it outside this main function of the component. We didn't define the type for this post variable. So here what we can do is, one way is that actually we just say promise of type post. One thing we forget here is that the return data is an array, so we need to make an array, and also we need to have async and await here. And I think this should be fine now. We've been working on the block client, not actually a block server, so we need to change the name for these. If I say server and then change the name for this block client. So now the naming is right, correct. So now if I try to use this, the result is the same. But if I check the network section here, and if I try to refresh it, you can see that there is no request here because it's already happening in the backend side. So in the backend side of NEXTJS, it does everything, fetches the data, and then return it to the front end. So fetching the data is happening in the backend part. Basically, it's happening on the server. The server fetches the data and then return it to the client part of the application. And that's the whole point of using server component and client component. And that's the main difference between these two components. That's enough for this tutorial. I hope you enjoyed this. Please leave me a comment if you have any question or if you have any idea that you want me to create a video about that. But thank you for watching until now. See you. Bye bye.